Hunter, I'm staying right here on Raw.
Hey, it's a Toxic Ring Scandal featuring TBK, the Turnbuckle King. We are here at it again, guys. We are here to talk about a good, interesting one today. We're here to talk about what are you signing to on a WWE contract. We're going to talk about it. Now, we're going to talk about the real deal behind WWE contracts, you know, the whole state of the whole contract situation. We know what you're signing up for. What's the real deal behind signing a WWE contract? Whether you're a veteran WWE superstar or a brand new WWE superstar or developmental star, whatever you sign your contract to, we're going to talk about it now. There will be people that talk about these contracts. We'll do react to interviews from Stevie Richards on his brand new channel. We'll talk with Chris Jericho talks about it, and also multiple wrestlers from the past. They're also going to talk about the WWE contracts, because you never know what you're going to sign up for if you don't pay attention and also ask questions with these contracts. No, as a good man once said, you always got to know what you're signing up for. So we definitely going to talk about that, where you sign on to a WWE contract. And as usual, we are going to air the dirty laundry. We are definitely going to talk about it. So think about these WWE contracts. It gets tricky, and it all depends on your value as a WWE superstar. So it definitely there are definitely layers to this whole thing. So some people, some superstars, it works out for. Some superstars, it doesn't, and it leads to them not renewing a contract or asking to be released or going to another promotion or just going independent. It all depends. Everybody is different. Everyone's not the same. Some people come out on top with big contracts. Some people, you know, they have a big name. They sign a huge contract, then to become a very mega star or superstar, very popular star, and become a champion like Logan Paul, for example. But some people, not so much. They don't really get the value that they thought they was going to get, didn't put in the work. Now, everything goes as a factor with that, you know, booking, you know, injuries. The wrong booking scenario and the wrong injury can change the whole landscape of a contract of signing of a WWE superstar. So it all depends, but it's definitely as they say, a cold world out there. But we are going to definitely look into that, because I don't think this gets talked about enough. And we know currently there are WWE superstars this year. They are up for contract renewal. Some contracts expired recently, or some just renewed. Um, yeah. So it all depends. You know, rumors said that Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch recently just re-signed with WWE. Rumors is Ricochet has not signed a WWE contract, may go to AEW. Then you have people like Chad Gable that did renew for a WWE contract. Many people, Cody Rhodes, Bayley, all renewed new WWE contracts. Meanwhile, you have people like Natalia that have not signed a WWE contract. Then you had a guy like Dijak, whose contract was not renewed because WWE has decided not to renew his contract. So it all depends. It all depends what the case may be. So we are definitely going to get into that. And it's mainly they're going to talk about talent contracts here. So hit the like, subscribe button as you come in. We here live on Facebook and X. We'll be on Facebook and X for a little while. Meanwhile, we'll say our goodbyes to Facebook and X. If you want to check out more of what are you signing to on a WWE contract, more about it, come to Toxic Ring Scandal, aka KDH, on YouTube. So check out more there. But I mean, other than that, though, that's how the whole scenario goes with the contracts. It works well for some, others it don't. And then with AEW being the second powerhouse behind WWE, there are superstars who use the leverage of a WWE contract that's up for renewal. They use each company use each other. WWE stars use AEW and AEW stars use WWE as leverage to try to get a bigger contract, teasing that they may go to another promotion, but they really don't. They just use that as leverage to get a bigger contract and better benefits as a WWE superstar or AEW superstar or AEW wrestler. J Man, hi, salute to you. Welcome to the locker room. Make sure you hit the like button as you guys come in to the locker room. We're gonna talk about the talent contracts here. But we all gotta know, you gotta know what you sign up for. These contracts, they get tricky. The fine print, it could be a number of things when it comes to these contracts. So it's definitely something that you want to look into. Definitely something that is not to be taken for granted, because if you don't follow the contract, by laws, you could be in breach of contract and get sued by WWE or whatever company promotion you're with, or AEW or whatever. And that's the last thing that you want. But it's interesting, definitely interesting. Like I said, this don't get discussed enough. There are definitely more to a signing than just signing your name on a dotted line. Definitely more to it than that. I can say that, to say the least. So contracts, they just, man, and then the money, everything behind the contract is a whole another beast of traveling, expenses, everything. So definitely something that WWE superstars have to manage as a whole. It's definitely something they have to manage. They have to keep into everything of sort. So other than that, we are shortly going to get into the whole Stevie Richards talking about this on his podcast. He goes on how WWE contracts really work, and he is going to discuss more about it, as he was a former wrestler himself. Was in the business a very long time. I think he started his career in independence in ECW and came to WWE. Was there for a while. I think his last contract, he said, with WWE was back in 2008. So we'll hear more about that and react to Stevie Richards, the retired wrestler. So let's talk about it. So we'll get to that shortly, and we'll see what Stevie Richards has to say regarding how WWE contracts really work.
Talking about just pay weekly, that kind of thing. But in 1996, Vince institutes the Downside Guarantee contract, which is pretty much the basis of what all contracts in WWE are going to be up to the present day. So, can you works, and I will have some follow-up questions as well.
Also, he's going to talk about the downside of a WWE contract. So that's something he's really going to talk about, the downside contract. He will get more into that as well. And this is a guaranteed contract he's referring to, that, as his co-host said, back in 1996. So he's going to really go into depth on that. But other than that, let's get into it. Let's see what Steve Richards has to say. See what else came to the log before we begin. Almost longest man 9,000 love WWE. Salute to you. Skills, okay, shut up. My friend name is a big fan. Well, cool. Make sure you hit the like button as you come in, Skior. You said Show's friend name is Nick. Okay. All right.
Bye-bye, bitch.
All right, let's get back to Stevie Richards' podcast. Let's see him talking about this. Anybody else come with nonsense, you gonna get the same access that fool just got. Come try me if you want to. I'm here trying to give game about the contracts and behind the contracts. So let's go. Let's get this in, and he is going to go and talk about this on his podcast, talking about Stevie Richards and the downside of a contract he's really going to get into. So let's get into it.
Well, downside guarantee is basically your safety net of a guarantee. If you don't work one day, if you're injured, any of these are things, and we're not factoring in, by the way, with injury, sometimes they freeze your contract and extend it at the end of that. That wasn't a thing when I was there all the time.
Explain to us how a downside contract works, and I will have some follow-up questions as well.
Well, downside guarantee is basically your safety net of a guarantee. If you don't work one day, if you're injured, any of these are things, and we're not factoring in, by the way, with injury, sometimes they freeze your contract and extend it at the end of that. That wasn't a thing when I was there all the time. They kind of case-by-case basis with that. Downside guarantee, in my case, $75,000 a year. You have two choices. Either you take a weekly, and then at the end of the year, if you're over 75, they cut you a check for the difference. If you're under 75, no harm, no foul, except the harm could be that if you go to...
Now, Stevie Richards saying good things right there. We're going to play that back, see what he said once again. Let's see what he said. Let's see, go back to what he said of a downside contract. OC Production, salute to you.
Kind of thing. But in 1996, Vince institutes the downside guarantee contract, which is pretty much the basis of what all contracts in WWE are going to be up to the present day. So, can you explain to us how a downside contract works? And I will have some follow-up questions as well.
Well, downside guarantee is basically your safety net of a guarantee. If you don't work one day, if you're injured, any of these are things, and we're not factoring in, by the way, with injury, sometimes they freeze your contract and extend it at the end of that. That wasn't a thing when I was there all the time. They kind of case-by-case basis with that. Downside guarantee, in my case, $75,000 a year. You have two choices. Either you take a weekly, and then at the end of the year, if you're over 75, they cut you a check for the difference. If you're under 75, no harm, no foul, except the harm could be that if you go to renegotiate, you were injured, you didn't work, we didn't get a return on the 75, they may cut you down, or they may work you a lot more in that year too. Go to OVW, go to Deep South Wrestling, go to FCW at the time, it wasn't an NXT, or go and do these things on your days off to make up for it, which are not paid things. You go on your own dime. Most times they didn't even pay for my Suburban Lodge. I was there in OVW for a week or two. I did that stuff on my own. So the downside on the other end, if you're taking pay sheets.
Now, I don't know if you guys know that. Now, he said if you get hurt or anything, it's 75, they'll cut your check if you go over it. But if you're down, if you go under, then it's going to be hard to renegotiate. That's interesting. I did not know that. That's good information. Let's continue on, see what he has to say about the downside of a guarantee contract.
The downside on the other end, if you're taking not paid things, you go on your own dime. Most times they didn't even pay for my Suburban Lodge. I was there in OVW for a week or two. I did that stuff on my own. So the downside on the other end, if you're taking pay sheets, meaning that if you're booked on every house show, if you're booked on every pay-per-view, if you're booked on every TV, if you have royalties for video games, action figures, if you have outside appearances that you can get paid for, these things are basically going to fluctuate according to the week. Now, like I said, pay-per-views were 3 months you waited. I believe house shows were 1 month. So the house show receipts, say if it was this weekend, you'd have to wait 30 days or approximately around there to get the pay for that. They can't calculate that in a couple of days and then get it out to you. Well, 1 month. If you're booked on every pay-per-view, if you're booked on every TV, if you have royalties for video games, action figures, if you have outside appearances that you can get paid for, these things are basically going to fluctuate according to the week. Now, like I said, pay-per-views were 3 months you waited. I believe house shows were 1 month. So the house show receipts, say if it was this weekend, you'd have to wait 30 days or approximately around there to get the pay for that. They can't calculate that in a couple of days and then get it.
So I don't know if you guys know that. So what he said was if you got royalties and pay-per-views were 90 days, which is approximately 3 months, and house shows were every month. So basically as a wrestler, every time you perform at a house show that's not televised or pay-per-view, you had to wait to get that money. You didn't get it right away, and it has to be calculated because he said it fluctuates every single month. I don't know if you guys knew that. That is interesting. I don't know if you guys knew that at all. That is crazy. I did not know that. That's something good to learn about the downside of a contract. It pretty much seemed like it's all dependent on your health. That's what it seemed like. Siglo Meyer, salute to you. Welcome to come to the locker room. But yeah, this was crazy though. There's a lot to learn about these contracts. Like I said, know what you're signing up for. Let's continue on.
Get it out to you. Well, at least that's what they say. So that's, I can understand house shows and stuff because it's always fluctuating and you don't know, what you're taking in. You got merch sales, who sold what, things like that. I was always opting, as I said in the segment on the expenses, to go with the weekly, try to budget, maybe starve a little bit sometimes, and then at the end of the year, hopefully have a big check that can cover taxes, investments, savings, stuff like that.
So yeah, you would get a balloon payment at the end of the year. Would it be the tax year or just the end of the calendar year you'd get this?
Oh, you're figuring, it's not the end of the tax year. The end of the calendar year is your downside guarantee. So at the end of your contract year, I'm sorry, let me correct myself. I was signed in June. So my downside was from June until June. Sorry about that. So here's a funny thing. I'll tell you a funny story. When I first got to WWE, I was on the $75,000 a year downside. I was not working all that much. During my off time or during my downtime between WCW and WWE, I had my neck injury to recover from. I was essentially retired. So I went to school for computer networking. And I went to like a tech school. And then this company, PC Help Services, would call me every day and say, hey, we got this job for you. Do you want to go out? You can make like 16, 18 bucks an hour in the year 1998, 99. That's a lot of money. 16, 18 bucks an hour. Just load Microsoft Windows, Office, all this stuff. Well, I was doing that during my indie. I was doing indies for 3-4 days a week. Then I was doing that almost every day, making decent money. So, and then when I got to WWE and got signed by them, I continued to do that, to do these day jobs on my day off. Even when I was booked on a Wednesday and Thursday, I would do these very simple setups, simple tech support, make my 16, 18 bucks an hour. Jim Ross called me in because I must have told one of the Stooges. And he said, listen, you're a WWE superstar now. You're on TV. You need to stop working outside jobs. So, and I didn't even know that I was a precursor. I was an innovator. I was a pioneer. Before Slam City came out, I was the...
There you go. So when you're a WWE superstar and you sign a contract, even if you're injured, I don't know if you guys noticed, you cannot work for anybody else. When you sign your name on that dotted line, that means you're WWE's. You belong to them. That's what you sign your name to. So you guys got to keep that in mind. You cannot do any other work outside of WWE. That's crazy because he said he was one of the first people to do it. And he said back in late 90s, 2000s, he was making 18 an hour. That was good money back in the day. Fast forward 2024, that's like minimum wage now. So we're talking over 20 years ago. It's interesting. I don't know if you guys knew that. Puma the Pig, salute to you. You said he looks like Aaron Rodgers in the face. You know who he else remind me of? He looked like he could be Adam Cole's dad. Adam Cole, baby. Like he be Adam Cole's dad. He got the look. He got the long hair, the ponytails like Adam Cole. That's who he kind of remind me of as well. You do like remind me of Aaron Rodgers. I would say Adam Cole. That's Adam Cole's dad, man. I would have thought he was Adam Cole's dad for all we know. But other than that, though, that's interesting. You cannot work for anybody else besides WWE. Puma said Adam's dad, baby. That's a good one. That's a good one. But let's continue. Let's see what Stevie Richards had to say about his contracts.
The original Slam City character.
Hey, it's good if you didn't go to the WWF in '95 because they would have given you a gimmick of the Windows 95 loader. Somehow they would have made it. Well, they would have tried to make it work.
Yeah, I would have made it work because I would have called all my opponents end users or dumb terminals as the support people.
So you could
anybody in IT knows what I'm
tech
talking
guy.
about. Yeah, the dumb terminals are the end users, not the actual server room.
Does WWE, and this goes under the contract as well, and your benefits or lack thereof, we're going to be talking about that as well. Do they pay for injuries incurred on the job, or do they even, maybe even if you injure yourself in the gym, will they pay for that?
It all depends on who you are. A lot of these answers are case by case. Even if you're hurt, there was an unwritten rule that they would never release anybody when they were hurt, but I believe they released Test when he was hurt. So they started to release people here and there, and I don't think that was a personal thing with Test. I just think somebody said he's making this, we can release him and bring him back or do whatever, but it's all at their discretion. I always tried to carry my own health insurance because outside of a few things that literally happened in the ring where I went to the emergency room or had to go to the doctor right from there, I tried to pay for all my own stuff. So that's another expense that wasn't throughout my entire career, but I tried to have my own health insurance, which back then, you're talking about another $200 a month minimum.
Were there any other concessions that WWE would give you? So I know, like for the guys who are on $1 million plus, some hotels would be thrown in, rental cars, that kind of thing, business class flights. Would you have ever been in a position to ask for these things, or did you even attempt to ask for concessions such as this?
Only in my last contract as a joke with Johnny Ace, I asked for $750,000 rental car, first class tickets, and a hotel. Good God, Steve, I can't give it that to you. I said, well, I had a 50-50 shot, right? And he laughed because actually, yeah, you did. Had a 50-50 shot, but no, I had no leverage whatsoever. There's been very few times in my career I ever had leverage, and I was self-aware enough to realize that. That doesn't mean I let anybody walk all over me at times. Well, I did at times. Let's take that back. That's the wrestling business in general. But, that kind of stuff with concessions, here's a little lesson for this is where talents don't get it. Do you really think Vince McMahon or WWE or TKO, any corporation, when they give you a first class ticket, and I say give in quotes, when they give you that, or they give you a tour bus, or they give you the free hotel room, they already know how they're going to get that back. You're still paying for it.
He is dropping gems right now. Man, he deserves one of these, man. He is he's on it.
And that is undisputed.
So all the WWE stars like Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Randy Orton, Logan Paul, all them tour buses, all the extra luxuries you get, you're still paying despite your name, because WWE is going to work it like a dog. They're going to work it like a dog. Let's rewind and see what Stevie Richards said again about that. That is gems right there. Yes, Puma the Pig, his real name is Dutch Mantel. That is correct. And yes, Steve Richards has been on this channel. Yeah, I'm gonna go run that back, man. That's crazy. Well, Matthew get it, and then he asked Johnny Ace for what he say, a 750,000 rental car hotel. He said he couldn't do it, but let's see. This is how contracts work, guys. Like, subscribe. You come into the locker room. Like and subscribe.
Walk all over me at times. Well, I did at times. Let's take that back. That's the wrestling business in general. But, that kind of stuff with concessions, here's a little lesson for this is where talents don't get it. Do you really think Vince McMahon or WWE or TKO, any corporation, when they give you a first-class ticket, and I say give in quote, there's been very
concessions that WWE would give you. So I know, like, for the guys who are on $1 million plus, some hotels would be thrown in, rental cars, that kind of thing, business class flights. Would you have ever been in a position to ask for these things, or did you even attempt to ask for concessions such as this?
Only in my last contract as a joke with Johnny Ace, I asked for $750,000 rental car, first class tickets, and a hotel. Good God, Steve, I can't give that to you.
Said they didn't want to get Steve Richards because he wasn't no top star and he wasn't one of Vince McMahon's favorites. Let that have been one of his favorites, like a John Cena, Triple H, Randy Orton at the time, Edge, Booker T, Undertaker, Kane. Guaranteed they would have got it without question. They would have got more than that, actually. But they want Steve Richards, not, much respect to him. He was not a main event star, so they didn't see no value in him. But he's spot on what he's saying, though. And I want to see what he said again about the whole, they're getting their value, their money's worth out of people who even gets the tour bus. Let's continue on.
I said, well, I had a 50-50 shot, right? And he laughed because actually, yeah, you did. Had a 50-50 shot, but no, I had no leverage whatsoever. There's been very few times in my career I ever had leverage, and I was self-aware enough to realize that. That doesn't mean I let anybody walk all over me at times. Well, I did at times. Let's take that back. That's the wrestling business in general. But, that kind of stuff with concessions, here's a little lesson for this is where talents don't get it. Do you really think Vince McMahon or WWE or TKO, any corporation, when they give you a first-class ticket, and I say give in quotes, when they give you that, or they give you a tour bus, or they give you the free hotel room, they already know how they're going to get that back. You're still paying for it. You're never going to beat the house in Vegas, and you're never going to beat the office. You just got to take, like I said before, am I getting screwed less than I'm comfortable with or more than I'm comfortable with?
Something I didn't ask before and I should have done was, and I think you already hit on it pretty much, but do you know when the freezing of the contracts due to injury came into force? Because apparently it wasn't in 2008 when you were last there.
No, it wasn't, and I don't know exactly when they did that. But to me, that's always a tactic of, I would rather the talent want to choose to be there than try to tell them, no, your year that you were hurt and here and worked here doesn't count at all. It's a very slippery slope. And like I said, I think it was a case-by-case basis. And obviously, if you had heat with the office, or if you went and made demands and tried to get concessions, I think they would extend you and then do that. Now, if you had a high-dollar contract, I believe they would renegotiate it because you were hurt and try to do it in their favor.
Even with Drew McIntyre, I think they kept extending his contract due to injury as well. So even at this time, they're now doing it for almost all talent, it seems like. Do talent feel the need, probably more nowadays than beforehand, the need to return early from injury if their contracts are being frozen?
In WWE, I believe so, because there is still an incentive. $2 to $250, it's a good amount of money, but you want to make more, and your window is very, very limited. So I would say talents do want to come back. The wrestling personalities are very unique. We do take pride in doing that stuff. There is a badge of honor type thing to say, I came back in a month from this injury. You know what I mean? And showing the office that you want to come back early with the hope that you're going to get taken care of, that they're going to see you're a good soldier, you came back early, you're willing to suffer through for the company, and you're hoping to get rewarded with a push or a longer push or a more sustained push, or which leads to more money, obviously. So yeah, I would say we're our own worst enemy. I think there's still very much a thing where the coaches, the doctors, the trainers, and the office need to protect the talent from themselves.
Downside guarantees, to go about it once again, don't include any merchandise or any other royalties for games or anything like that, do they? So unless there is a shortfall.
I can't speak on that today. I don't know how it's factored in. You had your $75,000 a year, in my case, guarantee. I took a weekly check. That means I have 3 or 4 quarters, if the video game is during that contract year, to get quarterly checks applied to my downside, then get the check at the end of the year. If I'm on pay sheets, then those quarterly royalty checks will be paid directly to me at that time.
Are there a guaranteed certain number of bookings for a guaranteed contract that you signed, if you're healthy, of course?
No guaranteed contract bookings as far as number of bookings you're going to have.
Yeah,
but
like in the old one was like you had to get like 10 in a year, and that was all they gave you. But
10 with no. Yeah, I remember 10 with no money guarantee. You would only get 10 days per year, and
150.
And everybody was on pay sheets.
So, what other guarantees or anything else like that did the WWE guaranteed contracts promise you, aside from the money?
Well, there was the death clause. There was the promise of them not being in the death clause. You have some stuff in bold letters on our show notes. That death clause was like 1 or 2 font sizes above the Mercedes Monet title. You knew death clause was in there, and I apologize. I used to keep all my contracts and everything, but I lost them in the move from Georgia to Florida. Otherwise, we would literally bring it up on the screen, and if we can find it, that would be great. It does exist, and it was put in there after the Owen Hart tragedy.
Tell me you did not just say that.
Did you guys know about that clause? Did you guys know about that clause? After Owen Hart passed away, they have a clause in your contract that if anything happens to you while you're on wrestler or anything else, that they are not liable or responsible for you in case you do end up passing away. That's crazy. I did not know that. Puma the Pig said, yeah, the time between injuries and returns definitely feels shorter. Definitely. Mr. Forte said RVD is in the Hall of Fame. Sabu was better IMO. Yeah, that's a very good argument. Welcome to the locker room, but yeah. Let's continue on to see what Stevie Richards got to say about these contracts. I didn't know all this stuff happened with the contract. So many little bit small piece of fine print that we did not know. This is what anybody that wants to be a WWE wrestler, this is what you're looking forward to. Or think about becoming a professional wrestler, especially doing it full time. This is what you're looking forward to. Stevie Richards is giving the gems right now of what's happening if you get on a WWE contract. Granted, I know Stevie Richards, been out the game for a long time, since 2008, but some things, as they say, as more things change, more stay the same. And they definitely have remained the same over the course of years, despite being bought up by TKO and everything else. But we're going to continue on.
Any other information about what you can and cannot do while under contract? So obviously you can't, if you're with WWE, you just can't go wrestle for, at the time, let's say TNA. But were there any other things that specifically they said you could not do or could not do without permission?
I would assume that they took a nod from the NFL and maybe the UFC, now that TKO owned both, that you can't jet ski or paraglide, or you can't skydive or ride a these things in the NFL do exist for big money contracts. If you're caught playing basketball, pickup game of basketball, and you blow your knee out, if you ride a motorcycle, that was put in after Ben Roethlisberger had the motorcycle accident, or it was more like specific about that kind of stuff. I didn't have anything like that in my contract. But I have no doubt if it came up and you weren't really favored by the office and they were looking for a reason to get rid of you, that they would do it.
Well, Lex Luger famously, because he was picked up by the WBF, the World Bodybuilding Federation, he couldn't even make that first guest pose thing because he had a motorcycle accident that ended up having that plate in his arm, and that took him out of TV. And that would have failed either way. WBF, it was terrible. But I mean, that took him out of there being their star for that promotion for 6 months, 8 months, something crazy like that as well. So maybe that was in their minds as well. With guaranteed contracts, renewals, and maybe giving your notice, how does that work? Do you have to give them a certain amount of time before you negotiate with another company, or you say that you're not going to re-sign? How does it all work?
Well, I never was in that position. I did ask for my release one time after the amazing ECW pay-per-view, December to Dismember, which ended 42 minutes early. I remember standing there, and Lashley's in the Elimination Chamber, and it was 10:42, and I'm next to Rene Dupree, who basically, we wrestled a dark match where we could have very easily been first match, the most important match on the show. The first match, we could have been the most important match on the show. But Lashley's there, I'm standing next to Rene, and I think one of the office guys probably stooges it off. And pyro starts to go off. And I said, man, I hope they have 18 minutes of pyro. Because ended so early. But I asked for it then. They denied it. Other than that, what I believe is you have to, much like if you rent an apartment, you have to give enough notice, anywhere from 2 to 3 months, or you have to declare that you're not accepting, say, an extension or an option. They didn't have any options when I was there, but I believe now they have, you have a 3-year and then you get a 4th-year option, much like, the rookie deals for NFL quarterbacks. I didn't have anything like that. My stuff was pretty straightforward. Here's your deal. It'll come up. Here's your new deal. Come up. Here's your new deal. Then we don't need you anymore.
For a recent example in TNA, Josh Alexander had made it clear that he wanted to leave TNA, but he had like a 3-year contract and the 3rd year was optional, and Anthem re-upped the 3rd year, so it's sort of like tough. That's it. Like the company has the option to, and you get no say.
Well, how do you feel about that, though? What do you think that does to the talent? What do you think that does in the locker room when the locker room sees the office treats the talent that way? And I don't think anybody's getting rich in TNA, so you're preventing Josh Alexander from going somewhere else.
But he signed. I mean, I sort of go, that's the risk you run to make your name, one rung up from the indies kind of thing. You go to TNA. WWE are clearly watching, and it's a way to get your name out there. Same with Joe Hendry or Jordan Grace, as we've seen. It's one of those things where you sort of take your chances, I guess, in that respect.
So let's
you may not be getting paid.
Let's put it this way. This is the once a tap dance, the game of chicken. When you first go in, they're going to offer you the opportunity. So that means less money. There's also a perception, especially in WWE, and I learned this. If I come in as a $75,000 a year guy, which there are people like Rock was on something like that, and look what happened to him. So there is opportunity.
I think he
started out like 500 a week or 52 a year. He was doing 500 a week, I think, when he was in Memphis as Flex Cabana.
He was on the right. This is something. So as you may well know, I've written a book on The Rock. This is one of the couple of things that I had to make an assumption on. That USWA was probably paying him bare minimum of $40 a night every night, or maybe not Sunday. But WWF at the time, were also keeping people on a retainer. Adam Copeland, Edge, was on a retainer of something like $300 to $350 a week, and I suspect Dwayne Johnson was at the time as well. So at least in Memphis, in USWA at the time, he was probably one of the best paid people there, because he was getting an extra 300 or what's 40 times 6 to 240. Yeah, thank you. So he was probably making $540, $550, somewhere between $550 and $600 a week then. But then when he signed his first contract, I think it was either for $125 or $150. I'd have to check the book, which is a really good contract at that time because he saw a lot in him. And supposedly he was talking with Steve Lombardi, the Brooklyn Brawler, and he was not going to sign for that because he was thinking, well, maybe I could get more money in WCW. And apparently, I don't know if he convinced him or just reaffirmed, Lombardi just told Dwayne, and he said, sign this now, you're looking at a gift horse in the mouth, and Vince will do something with you. WCW won't, or most likely won't. So also with WWE, probably more than WCW, and you may be able to shed more light on this, is with WCW, especially with the high money contracts, that was one thing that stopped some of the younger talent from being elevated, because you were basically pushed as far as what you were being paid. So, like, if Lex Luger's making $1 million, then you have to justify his $1 million by pushing him a certain amount, regardless of whether he's in a position to make that money back for the company.
Yeah, and WWE works that way too. Like I said, $75,000 a year guy. I was under the impression that Rocky was getting 75 when he first came in as Rocky Maivia, because that was the standard in a way here and there. So if he got more, Lombardi's right. When you're over that 100, 125, or in the 150s, you at least got a chance to be in the IC title picture. You know, back then, if you're 200, 300, you're like, okay. And that's the way I wish I knew when I came in, but I had no choice. Just like Josh Alexander going to TNA. I need the exposure to TV time. I need the opportunity to get over. So I didn't know that it was kind of like, well, we can just sit you at home for 75 and eat that and not even care. You can lose every match, and 75 is still a pretty decent like investment that we don't feel like we're losing money on. The TNA thing, TNA, and I said it before, TNA is an indie with TV. So you have to do whatever you can do. I don't even know why they have contracts. The contracts only favor the office anyway.
Wow, you guys hear that? He said TNA really favors the office. And I noticed when people make they run in TNA, become TNA World Champion, men or women's, when their contract's up, they are out of there. It's bye-bye, they're gone. And next thing I know, they're either in WWE or AEW, and they get very lucrative contracts. So that's true. Look at Jordynne Grace, for example. I just heard a couple days ago that her contract is supposed to be up next year. And WWE is very interested in her, you know, with the collab with TNA, NXT. So we can see Jordynne Grace in WWE once her contract expires with TNA. Look at Moose. I mean, when his contract's up, he's going to eventually leave TNA as well. So I heard TNA paid the very least. So he got a point there. Continue on.
Contracts hardly ever favor the talent. So
is guaranteed, because as we said, there's like 3 different versions. There's just pay what you work, guaranteed contracts, and then downside guaranteed contracts. What are the pros and cons of downside guaranteed contracts?
Well, it depends on the length. And it depends on if all 3 to 5 years is the same exact amount. In other words, if mine was 75, 125, 150, or 200, at least I know if I can outperform my contract in year 1, then they will do more with me, seeing that, first of all, he's a good worker. He does what he's told. He doesn't get into trouble. All these different aspects or factors. Year 2, the bump up to 125 means we got to start getting our money back on this guy. He's already built a good foundation. He's proved himself. Year 3, if it's 150, you may stay in that IC title, US title, a storyline here and there, kind of a mid-card thing. You might drop at 125, 150, or 200. At least I know if I can perfect it before.
Also, I want to notate too that it's a certain bracket. So if you make a certain amount of money, you'll be in the mid-card scene, which is United States Intercontinental. If you make more money, higher bracket, that's when you get pushed for a world title. Interesting to know.
TNA is an indie with TV. So you have to do whatever you can do. I don't even know why they have contracts. The contracts only favor the office anyway. The contracts hardly ever favor the talent. So
is guaranteed, because as we said, there's like 3 different versions. There's just pay what you work, guaranteed contracts, and then downside guaranteed contracts. What are the pros and cons of downside guaranteed contracts?
Well, it depends on the length. And it depends on if all 3 to 5 years is the same exact amount. In other words, if mine was 75, 125, 150, or 200, at least I know if I can outperform my contract in year 1, then they will do more with me, seeing that, first of all, he's a good worker. He does what he's told. He doesn't get into trouble. All these different aspects or factors. Year 2, the bump up to 125 means we got to start getting our money back on this guy. He's already built a good foundation. He's proved himself. Year 3, if it's 150, you may stay in that IC title, US title, a storyline here and there, kind of mid-card thing. You might drop down a little bit, come back up. You make the jump to 200, or you go 75 to 150 to 200, you're on a path to have an opportunity for them to give you the ball in year 2 and 3. If you stay at 75, as I learned, you're always going to be a $75,000 a year guy.
Wow. He dropped gems right there. So basically, this is why WWE superstars we see that are doing well, that we always question, why isn't he in the world title picture or the WWE title picture? Why does he have a world title? Or why a WWE title? This goes by pay bracket on the contract. He says 75, 100, he said 75, 125, and then he said 200 and above. So if you're in the 150 to 200, 75, 125 to pretty much up to 150-ish, maybe 200 the highest. But if you're above 200K a year on a contract, that's when they push you, see value in you, and get their money back. You will be in the world title picture. Don't necessarily mean you have to win the world title or WWE title. That's when they see value in you. It goes by pay bracket. If they see money in you, you will get pushed. Or if you don't make that money, that contract, your next renewal, you will get pushed. If you're only in the 150-ish, upper 175, 200, that means you're only going to stay in the mid-card. That explains why a lot of guys in WWE stay in the mid-card. You know, that could be said right now for Sami Zayn, who's the Intercontinental Champion. That could be said for maybe an LA Knight guy. Maybe he's in the mid-card. You know, now Chad Gable, who recently just signed a new WWE contract, we don't know how much is it for. Maybe he gets over 200 and he's in the world title picture. Ricochet, if he does decide to re-sign with WWE, if he's over 200K, he may be in the world title picture. But if these superstars who do re-sign with WWE, if they are not in the world title picture, it also plays a factor. Not if they're over or not over, not just their character in-ring skill. It depends on the contract length. So that right there is undisputed.
And that is undisputed.
So that's gems that Stevie Richards is putting us on right now. I did not know that till now. But let's continue on.
We may pay at 94, 105. You might have some spillover, but I've never. My best year was obviously Right to Censor. I worked 300 days that year, and I did a lot of appearances. I did a lot of signings as a heel, which was strange. I did a lot of outside stuff I didn't get paid for. I got paid $192,000 that year. Other people in my group, I know one guy that used to be a porn star pulled in about 300 to 500. So, but 192, I saved all I could. I invested all I could. That's just the way it goes. It's not what you make, it's what you save and what you invest. And it sounds so cliche, but there's certain people that made tens of millions of dollars, maybe even $100 million in this business, but somehow I have more money invested in the bank than they do. And that's not a slight, that's a choice. We all choose. You know, if you want to spend, you want to live the lifestyle, you want to be a jet flying, limo riding son of a gun, or you want to be like me, where the same 4 or 5.
You talking about Ric Flair? Jeff Flying, Robert, we know he talking about Ric Flair. We know what you did, Stevie Richards.
I didn't know that. You know what you did. I know what you're talking about. I was fair and square. You know what you're a legend, man.
Oh man, but he has a point. You gotta invest. Definitely invest and save your money. But this interview's almost done, and then we'll get into other interviews when we talk about contracts specifically.
$6 tank tops and soccer shorts. It's a choice.
We'll end on this portion before we go on to the next segment. They can release you at any time, of course. WWE, we're talking about it. But what if you simply decide to not turn up for work? So can they withhold your pay, or can you simply retire and they can't legally they can't force you to go to the arena and perform wherever it may be. But then does that mean that you are indefinitely under contract with them?
In this day and age, maybe. Boy, what you run the risk of with that, this is where you got to learn a little bit about politics, which that part I'm good with. Showing up, doing my job, being respectful, and just trying my best. But if you decided not to show up, it really does depend a lot on how Vince wakes up that day and how he feels. And if you have heat with the office and that's why you're staying at home, you can be sued for breach of contract, nothing less. And they have an entire floor of lawyers on retainer. So my question would be to re-challenge or challenge or ask the question of you and anybody that decided to do that. What's the end game? Is this your hill to die on? What are you hoping to get out of this, as opposed to what you're definitely going to lose, which could be they keep extending your contract indefinitely. As you said, you're indefinitely under contract with them. The longer you sit out, you're not getting paid. They withhold pay. They could fine you a ton of money for missing shows, and you're sued for breach of contract. I would just wonder what would make you still want to sit at home and not go to work when that's being, if it's a toxic, dangerous work environment, that's a different story. But what are you doing to where all those things will probably happen to you in order to, like, how do you feel like you're going to come out on the other end? I don't think you're going to come out of it winning at all.
Obviously, you couldn't just go to New Japan or TNA or whatever it was at the time, but could you just work a quote-unquote regular job without WWE coming after you at that point if you decided to not show up for work?
Well, you could work a regular job, but they still have every right legally to come after you. Because Vince, remember Shane, this is the most important match on the show. That's what they're going to say. You are advertised. They'll start advertising you at every show TV, and they'll put you on a pay-per-view. And then, show those. Now you're looked like you're an asset to the company, and it's costing them the money, where they could turn around and now sue you financially for their losses, for punitive damages. I'm not saying they do all those things, but it's within their legal right, and having all those lawyers on retainer.
All right, that is Stevie Richards talking about downside of a guaranteed contract. He talked about that on the Stevie Richards channel. But this was good information that he gave us. Very, very good information. Shout out to him. He always give good game and drop gems. That's crazy though, guys, that he said that. But I know he's not the only one that has something to say too. There are other people that have something to say as well. We're gonna get to that in a second. It's nowhere near as long. The only one that maybe seems somewhat as long is we're gonna talk about many wrestlers who had negotiations with Vince McMahon. But that is crazy though. This is what it's about, a contract. Definitely something they're gonna talk about. But that is interesting to see. What are they gonna do? But other than that, though, we're going to talk about Chris Jericho, who went on a podcast. He went on Collider Live. He talks a little about the contract. This is when he first got into AEW back in 2019, and he talked he touched on it a little bit, and we'll talk about. I'll react to that too. The like button and subscribe. You come to the locker room.
Like I said, it's a happy accident. So if someone was going to do that to me and I was going to know, okay, you're going to need 12 stitches, but it's going to add, $1 million in revenue to people who want to see your match. All right, I'll take it. Yeah. That's fine. I got scars all over from stuff that has happened like that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, because of that, and because so many people are now talking about AEW and the television deal begins in November,
October, November. It's in the fall. I know that for sure.
And it's gearing up, and all the buzz is there. And already it seems like that WWE is starting to have some answers, whether it's the counter programming that they did with you guys over the weekend, whether it's the it looks like they're getting rid of the PG stuff. They're going to go a little bit more adult for the going back to kind of like the Attitude Era-ish. The Paul Heyman and Bischoff, the rumors about all that stuff happening. Is that's kind of competition to take you back to like the WCW versus Raw days, where that gets you more excited to let's really go for this thing?
Well, I mean, it's good to have. I think competition is kind of a big word because you don't compete with a worldwide juggernaut like WWE, but I think it's good to have an alternative, give people an option, because there hasn't been that for 20 odd years, right? So when you have that, automatically it's better for the fans, creates a huge buzz for our company, and we're selling 12,000 tickets in 5 minutes in Chicago for August 31st, and we did it for Vegas and this, that, and nothing. Also, and here's the best part, it's good for the wrestlers, for the boys and girls themselves. And the moment I signed with WWE, I think it took them by surprise, even though I told them I was going to do it. I think they're like, okay, go ahead, do it. And then when I did it, it's like, what? You fucking did it? And I think right off the bat, the rule over the next week or so is that everybody under contract gets double their salary if they re-sign their contracts today for 5 years.
Right.
So that nobody can get out earlier.
Yeah.
So if you're going on that aspect, everybody in the WWE made money just because I signed with AEW. So they all owe me a giant thank you.
Have you gotten any thank yous from them?
A couple, but I don't think people really realize. I think deep down they do. There's been a couple guys that have said, thank you, but I think they all realize, and it's not just me, myself, but the fact that AEW exists at all. And it's funny because when my dad played in the NHL for 10 years, and in 1972, Bobby Hull from the Chicago Blackhawks signed with a new hockey league called the WHA for $1 million. And when he signed, he was the top guy in the league. And the moment he left, all the rest of the players in the NHL automatically got raises to not go. My dad went from 35 grand a year to 100 grand a year just to not jump to the WHA. So here we are, 45 years later, and Jericho did the same thing that Bobby Hull did. It's just very strange and funny to think about that.
Do you guys remember when Jericho first went to AEW? Remember Vince McMahon was offering a lot of contracts to people that weren't even on TV, that were pretty much talent enhancers. They got big contracts. I think Maria and Mike Kanellis was one of them. It was Chad Gable, Ricochet. Everybody got big contracts, and these contracts end up being up this year for 5 years, or they got released later on. But that was crazy. I remember that time when that happened with Chris Jericho. But that's how contracts work. It's a way to lock you in. So, like I said, know what you're signing up for at the end of the day. What are you signing up for when it comes to these contracts? That was Chris Jericho on Collider Live. Now, another one, the last we'll go over. This is Title Match Wrestling. They're going to talk about many pro wrestlers from the past, maybe some in recent memory. They're talking negotiating WWE contracts with Vince McMahon. You'll see guys like Jesse Ventura, Sabu, Enzo Amore, and others. And Buff Bagwell, I believe, too. Let's see what you guys say. It's interesting, though. Let's see what's going on next. We will talk about that right now.
What's so amazing about that is, Vince offered all these promoters a deal. They didn't have to take it. Nobody ever talks about that. You get up there and all of a sudden there's 15 transfer trucks with their logo on the side. All of their employees, the ring crew, had these jumpsuits with matching logos. And I'm thinking, we're not in Kansas no more, Dorothy, I'm telling you. And we actually went into the building, Chicago up there. We actually went in and got kind of lost. The first person I ran into was Vince McMahon. Of all the million employees, we ran into him, and the most impressive thing to me to this day, he knew my whole name. Wow. People wonder why he's on top of his game right now. He knew. I took 3 guys with me, Tommy Angel, David Isaacs, and some of Nelson Moore's guys. He knew every one of us. He knew our name. He thanked us for coming. If there's anything he can do. For a young kid like me from backwoods of North Carolina, it's the greatest moment of my life that he even knew, because I've always heard over the years that you don't have to go up there and do a dark match. If Vince McMahon wants you, he's already heard about you. Chances are he's already seen you. You know, it don't matter where it's at.
I never knew what a tryout was. I never heard of a tryout. I thought they want you or they don't. And one day, J.J. Dillon called me and said, "Hey, Vince would like to want you to come in and get a look at you." This was on 94, 95, I think it was. And I go, "What do you mean get a look at me?" He goes, "Yeah, come on in for a tryout." Well, tryout? What's a tryout? He goes, "To see if we want to use you." And I said, "Well, does it pay?" And he goes, "Yeah, it pays $300 a shot." I said, "Well, I'll come in for the money and see if I'll try you guys out. I'll see if I like you guys." So I came in and did the money, and they offered me a job, and I said I couldn't take it because I was already with ECW. And Vince goes like, "I can't believe that you would give a job. I'm offering you $250,000 a year, and you're gonna give up a job for a job that might not even be there tomorrow."
Tell me you did not just say that.
Sabo, you gave up $250,000, $250,000. This was back, what, 94, 95, mid-90s, which is pretty much equivalent to maybe almost $1 million today, 750, 800K. To stay at ECW, end up folded. That was not a smart move. That puts you on the list, man.
You just made the list!
Yeah, that's crazy. But this is multiple wrestlers talking about negotiations when Vince McMahon approached and wanted him to sign these wrestlers at different points in time to WWE.
I said, "Yeah." And it was, got screwed in the end, but whatever.
What was it that made you want to stay with ECW instead of the WWE?
The Paul made these big old promises, and I like being able to express my art form my way. The WWE would have changed me, and actually what they had in mind, I don't know if you remember, was called the Sultan. The Sultan was one of the Samoans, and he had his tongue cut out, supposedly, and he had a thing over his mouth. And his manager was his uncle, the Iron Sheik. So it was kind of like my gimmick. I didn't speak, and my uncle was the Sheik, and I wasn't a Sultan, but he had the baggy pants. He kind of made him look like me, and he didn't, that was the idea they wanted for me, because they go, we would modify your gimmick. And I go, well, I don't want to change nothing. I'm happy it's the way I am. And then Vince goes, well, no, we don't hire talent, we create talent. And that's what I understood, that, they weren't hiring me for Sabu, they were hiring me for a body,
So they kept that and then basically just placed it on Rikishi.
Put on somebody else. Yeah, Rikishi, exactly. You remember, yeah.
I don't know why I remember that. They only wanted you in under their terms so that they could kind of mold you into their own.
And then someone could say, well, I take credit for him going over, or blame it on him because he didn't go over. You know what I mean? But since I kind of built myself, no one could take credit for me. The only thing they could do is say, he did it wrong because I didn't show him, or something like that, But I didn't want to embarrass my uncle by saying the Iron Sheik was my uncle. That was a deal breaker. I probably would have did it if the Iron Sheik wasn't involved. Nothing against him personally, and he even knows that. But there's no way, it'd break my uncle's heart to say that this guy was my uncle, or the to go with that stupid gimmick.
Had you met Owen before?
Nope.
How did that turn out?
It was a great match. I wrestled Scotty Too Hottie in my first match, and Vince liked it. So he goes, "This is my mark match. I want you to wrestle Owen Hart, but be careful, he's got a bad knee, boom, boom, boom." So I went out there and I wrestled, and Vince said, "Great, you got a job." After that match, he said I had a job, and that's when he offered me boom, boom, boom. Then I had another night to wrestle, and then that night I said, "No, I can't take the job."
Do you look back and say, you know what, man, this thing with Paul Heyman,
Yeah, I wish I would have took it. I wish I would have took it, yeah.
I came when Vince called. Vince told me, "I'm going to call you in about 6 months, and then you're going to come and work for me forever." And I said, "Okay." So I went back and worked for Vern for about 6 months, but I knew the call was coming.
Right.
You know what? How Vince did it with me? He waited until he had booked Minnesota, and then he had me jump one for that card.
Right.
I left the AWA and went to the WWF in that card.
Did you give Vern notice through a mail, and then you did promo? Telegram?
And that was under Vince's orders. I was going to go do it face to face, and Vince said, "I don't want you to do that," because he said all that'll be is a confrontation and a fight. He said, "Just send him a telegraph stating that you no longer desire the bookings of the AWA, that you are now with the WWF." He was my boss, so I did what my boss told me to do. Oh, I loved Vince Jr.
Dang, Vince did anything to get those talents. Say told Jesse Ventura, tell him no longer booking, and he did it. Make sure you write it down on tell because there'll be a confrontation. Wow. Let's continue on.
Vince Jr. was a savior in a way to all of us in the business. He had a vision, and the fact his production, and we ended up on NBC television, and we all became megastars. I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm at today without what happened at that point, but I played a role in it too. But we had threats, we had death threats. All of us were told we'd never work in another territory, we'd be blackballed again. But that didn't bother me because I was ready to end it anyway when I was done with him, which I did. We were completely on until I brought my lawsuit against Vince when I left him.
About the royalties and all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And when I sued Vince, of course, we had to depose him. Well, let me regress a little. Right before WrestleMania 2 and right before I did Predator,
right,
I stood up in the dressing room and tried to unionize wrestling.
Smashed about that.
Yeah. And there were nobody from the office there when I did it. I said, boys, now's our chance. All the publicity's gone out on WrestleMania 2. All we have to do is refuse to wrestle and go public and say we want federal, because it's federal law. We want union representation to come in. And what caused that, I was in Vegas. And I got on an elevator with Gene Upshaw. Remember, head of the NFL union?
Right.
I remember Big Gene looked at me and all he said to me was, you boys need to unionize. And I said, I know, Gene. And so I made this spiel to the boys. I said, look, if we can do it, then we can get WCW to follow suit. If WCW's wrestlers will do what we're doing here, we can have a union. I made the big spiel. The next day, my phone rang. It was Vince. He came within an eyelash of firing me.
I was going to ask you, how much heat did you get for that?
The only thing that saved me, and the reason I did it, I had to quit Vince to do Predator. Vince wasn't going to let me do it.
That's one of my questions.
And I quit. I told him, well, then I quit. Because I said, I can always come back to wrestling. I'll never get a chance to co-star with Arnold Schwarzenegger again. As I went off 10 weeks to do Predator, Saturday Night Main Event got renewed for a second season, but NBC thought there'd be Jesse Ventura. There wasn't Jesse Ventura, it was Bobby Heenan.
Right.
The heat came down from NBC. We bought this program with Jesse Ventura. Where the hell is he? Then Vince came back, and now the ball was in my court. And so when I came back from Predator, the first thing I did on the set of Predator, Schwarzenegger came up to me and said, Jesse, my next film this fall is going to be The Running Man. He said, there's a part in there you're perfect for. I would like you to do it. I said, great. So when I got back to the United States after Predator, before I even talked to Vince, I signed The Running Man that fall so I would have the ace in the hole. This way I could say to Vince, no.
Right.
Because I now had an acting career. And plus, when I did Predator, when I came back to Vince then, I said, Vince, you won't hear me bring up union anymore. He goes, really, why not? I said, because I'm now a member of SAG. I got my union. I've got retirement. I've got medical benefits. I said, if these guys are too stupid to want it, I said, then let them deal with it. I got my union.
Now, when you came back, did you sense a little bit of a strain on your relationship?
Spoken and spun like a true politician. I mean...
So let me get this straight, Jesse, the Body Ventura. You talked all this about getting unionized with WWE, getting the boys to stick up for you. Maybe WCW will follow suit. But soon as they gave you got the acting roles with Arnold Schwarzenegger, with Predator, and later on followed up with Running Man, and you was on the SAG. If you guys don't know, that's Screen Actors Guild, and you know they have a union and they have insurance. Same thing that The Rock and John Cena is currently on. Now the union's out the window. So you really didn't want a union. You just wanted to make sure you was good. You weren't all for the boys. You was all for yourself. So once again, you spoken and spun like a true politician. And remember, Jesse Body Ventura is the former governor of Minnesota. And so is Arnold Schwarzenegger, former governor of California. Once again, you spoke and spun like a true politician, Jesse. Great job.
Spoken and spun like a true politician. I mean...
But everything he's saying is right, though. he did try to unionize, and he ended up getting if he had turned down the acting roles, this is contract. This is all related to contract and negotiation. If he had not took the acting role with Arnold Schwarzenegger in Predator, I believe it was the film came out in 1987, the first one, he would have not gotten another opportunity to act with Arnold Schwarzenegger had he had turned it down. And he ended up getting another role. So he had a point. He can always wrestle, but it's only one opportunity, one shot to be with Arnold Schwarzenegger, definitely at that particular time, to do the movie Predator. So he was definitely right about that. But you still spoke and spun like a true politician, Jesse. But let's see what else you got to say regarding contracts. He said Vince was going to fire him. That's because, as Stevie Richards stated earlier, at the very beginning, breach of contract. That's why he was going to fire you, Jesse. You left that part out, unless you're about to say it now. Let's continue on.
With Vince to work with?
No.
Maybe,
Nope.
Okay.
Vince is always a professional when
All
you're
business?
all business when you're on the mic and performing.
Okay.
Or doing what you do. No, I give him credit for that.
Plus, you're an asset to his company, so.
Yeah, there was.
Here's to sweet summer days together and
whatsoever.
Vince McMahon flew me in, me and my wife, limousine, whole 9 yards into Newark, Stanford. Am I saying that right?
Yeah,
Stanford, Connecticut. Flew me in the whole thing, and this is before I think even he knew he was buying the company. Fast forward, buys the company. I become, what's your name again? Instead of, I said, wait a minute, we just met. Don't you remember us meeting and talking? And that was all gone then, because now he owns the company. I got no stroke. I got no leverage. They offered me, I think, 175. And I said, Vince, I have to sell everything. It's a lot of money, and thank you. I said, but I have to sell everything in the world. I sell my house. I have to sell my motorcycle, my cars. I said, I cannot do a little better than that. I mean, keep in mind, no leverage. I think we ended up settling at 225 or 250, with some incentives. I came up with a brilliant idea, I thought. I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Vince and say, look, let's get past all this money stuff. Let's do this. To get to the figure out back to the 250, I said, let's just, you ain't got to pay me for the last 2 months. And that would have been about like 60 grand for me, 60, 80 grand for 2 months. And he said, I said, I won't sit at home. I'll come to work right away. And my agent was Brad Small at the time. He went, Mark, great idea. So that got the heat off me, we thought. I saved Vince $80,000. I come aboard with the contract he wanted. Because 225, when you're 31 and you're Buff Bagwell, you're still going to be a millionaire because I'm such a baby still. Yep. I'm in the prime of all of it. So let's suck hind tit for 250 over here, a ton of money still, knowing you're going to be in the $500,000 range in a few years and be one of their main players. You're in shape, you're healthy, you feel good. Let's get over as friends. So I did so and was fired in 2 weeks. So it was pretty rough.
You had to reinvent yourself in the character, but keep that gray area because that's what Vince loved. Vince wanted me.
Did he like your character? Did he get it?
I wouldn't be remiss to say that I think I was probably his favorite character he had on that show for about a year. I don't. Maybe he hated me. Maybe he thought it was the funniest thing. I don't know, but I was booked more than any other guy with the microphone on TV for a year. In a rookie year, me and Big Cass were the #1 merchandise sellers in the company, and that is what Vince likes. Money. So if Vince loves John Cena, why does he love John Cena? Because he's the top guy in the company. He makes money. He shows up to work every day, does his job to the best of his ability. Nobody can ever say that Enzo didn't show up to work and get his fucking ass kicked, hop up, and do it again the next night. You know? I was bringing... When I talked to Vince, the first time I ever talked to him, I brought him this book.
Right.
I said, for the past 4 years you've been investing in me. I want you to know that I haven't taken that lightly, and because I'm on salary in NXT, I've deemed that to be on the clock all day, every day. And because of it, I've written about 4,000 pages worth of material here, and everything that I've ever said on your television programming, I've highlighted. I make music, and this happened after I got knocked out cold on the pay-per-view. This is when I went to Vince. I said, I make music. And if I can never wrestle again, I want you to know that this is what I've been doing. And then I just shook his hand and I laughed. Every time me and Cass ever saw, Vince, dude, I didn't want to do it. Everybody says have a relationship with Vince, talk to Vince. But dude, I was like, bro, don't ask, don't tell, bro. Like, we see that guy, Cass, shake his hand, walk back in the locker room, go hide in the hallway, do whatever, go fucking, avoid this guy at all costs. But every time we saw him, he smiled and shook our hands and was just like, and then maybe he'd hit me with a punch on my way, I'd sell it, or hit a foot shuffle, dude. I don't fucking know. When I saw him, I was always in character. Every time I saw him, I was in character. I never left character. Right. So he didn't know the person. He never knew the person. I knew that I was Hunter's redhead stepchild, and Hunter will sit in a room, browbeat me, and tell me I'm about to be fired. And then the next night, I get handed a microphone in the main event on fucking Monday Night Raw. Like, Vince is the one calling the shots.
Now, buddy, for some of the newer fans that are out there that may not be familiar with your work and with the WWE Network and things like that out now, what would you recommend fans check out of Buddy Landel?
Well, there's Flair and I, Shawn Michaels and I. There's some matches on the WWE's website. You can go on YouTube and find all of my stuff. I mean, I'm wrestling, but you don't know who Buddy Landel is. What's up with that? Hey, what up? What up, man? I love it. They're all over YouTube and everywhere else. I mean, Vince is selling everything that I've ever done, and of course, I'll never see a nickel out of it. Talking about pimps in the pulpit. Shane, can I get an amen from Amen Corner? You can't say amen, say ouch. I've signed one contract in my life, Bill Watts, in 1986 with UWF, right? But everything from 81 until today, somehow Vince bought it and gets exclusive rights over my, copyright of my name and likeness and, all of these things that I love Vince, but I just feel like that, hey, if you're going to sell it, pay me. I mean,
Boost your revenue and drive.
You standing here and you don't even go here.
We actually went to Vince's house. It was Hawk and I and Ellering went to Vince's house. Just negotiating with Jim Crockett with a guaranteed contract. So nobody had guaranteed contracts at the time. So we were going to be the first ones, besides Flair, that had a guaranteed contract with the NWA. So we go to Vince's mansion out there in, I think it's in Stamford, Connecticut.
Yeah.
And we go to the office. We were at the house first. Sat there, and it was kind of funny in a way because Vince got up to leave the meeting at one time, but he left all Piper's and Hogan's merchandising numbers. They're sitting right on there in the printout. Like, we're not going to look, right? He goes, yeah, you got merchandise stuff here. Here's numbers right here. Of course, we look.
Baiting the hook.
So we saw that, and we went to Vince and listen, Vince, here's our guaranteed contract. Can you match that? You want to do guaranteed? And he says, well, at the time, we don't do guaranteed contracts. We give you opportunity. I said, well, I can't pay bills on opportunity.
Right.
So if you have a guaranteed contract, we would do it. Otherwise, we're probably just going to stay with the AWA. And that's what we did. But going in Vince's house, I mean, it was actually kind of an interesting thing. I mean, above his fireplace mantle was just like big.
That's crazy. Back with Road Warrior Animal, they was trying to get guaranteed contracts then, back in AWA days, and Vince said they didn't do that. So he was already 10 steps ahead back then. Wow. Let's continue on.
Big, like 5 foot by 8 foot painting of Vince in one of those total green suits and everything like that. And of course, Hawk and I were jabbing with him a little bit about the painting on the wall. And, you know, we actually had a great meeting with him. You know, he had an Oriental chef that made us some real, like, authentic, like chicken fried rice and all that kind of stuff. It was actually really good. We had a nice meeting, and then we went to the office, looked around the office. But then we decided to stay with the NWA. He played it off like he didn't care, but I think he really did care. We were the only one. We were the only one that didn't jump. He knew what we were making and what we needed to make, what we deserved to make by the time we came in there as a team. And he pulled the old, "Oh, well, you're a team, so I can't pay you what like a single guy would be paying. I got to split it up because there's 2 of you." And I'm thinking to myself, that's crap, because we're selling a lot of merchandise.
Right.
You're selling hundreds of millions of dollars of merchandise from us. Come on, you know. So.
That's cap. Totally cap.
I agree. That is cap. Yeah, he had a point. All that money, he mad because I heard about the whole Road Warriors. This is the demolition tag team that was a mock of the Road Warriors. That's why he didn't care. He went and created his own Road Warriors, which was in the team of demolition, who were once the longest reigning tag team champions until New Day broke that record in 2016. But yeah, he has a point though. Vince was full of it. They tried to get a decent amount of money. Vince tried to lowball the Road Warriors. Let's continue on. And this is contract negotiation. What are you signing to on a WWE contract and negotiating?
And he says, okay. I said, well, as long as you make what we were making when we were singles, and in the first year, we made $100,000 less than what he shook hands on. We said, hey man, you said
that's cap. Totally cap.
We were gonna make a job, make it up to the second year. It was $100,000 less again. So now we're short about $200,000 each working for Vince.
Right.
So that's where Hawks start getting really pissy and saying, you know, screw Vince. If I want to go party and I want to go drink, I'm going to go party and drink. I'm a grown-ass man. He goes, Vince is screwing us on pay. I'm going to go do this.
Were people in the office trying to turn the screws on Hawk and keep him on the straight and narrow?
Boy, I was trying to, because he was my partner, man. Right. I was trying to keep him on a straight and narrow, you know. But yeah, they tested him a lot, and they came and told him he pitched dirty a couple of times, which we both knew he wasn't dirty.
Right.
And Hawk said, test me again. I'll tell you right now, I'm not dirty. I can promise you I'm not dirty. And, you know, but then again, Hawk was fucking the system, you know. And I try to tell Hawk, listen, man, you work for 3M or Honeywell or any of those companies, you got rules and regulations you got to abide by. But Hawk just didn't want to do it. He goes, man, this guy's screwing us on pay animal. I'm sick of this crap. And then finally, when the straw broke the camel's back was in SummerSlam 92, and, you know, at Wembley Stadium, Hawk flipped out.
Whoa, did you guys know that? SummerSlam 92. Now, I covered that here at the locker room. That's the same SummerSlam with the famous Bret Hart versus British Bulldog for the Intercontinental Championship, where British Bulldog was under the influence the whole match and got walked through by Bret Hart. Now, it's the same event the straw that broke the camel's back, that Hawk was under the influence of using substance abuse. Wow. Man, y'all was some wild boys back in the golden age era. But let's continue on. That's what messed up their contract deal. And he was tampering the system when he took the drug test. Let's continue on. See what other. I think we're almost. Yeah, I think we got another 8 minutes with another wrestler who talked about negotiating contracts with Vince McMahon, whether it's re-signing or joining WWE or WWF at the time. Let's continue on, guys. And hit the like, subscribe button, notification bell when you come into the locker room.
Wanted to go back a little bit to when you were in the WWF and when you were writing for them, because I guess a lot of people don't know this, but I wanted to get your takes on what you thought of some of the gimmicks at the time and what you thought some of the best and the worst were.
I wasn't actually writing for him. I was producing. There's a big difference. The writers were Pat and Bruce and Jerry, I guess, and I was being groomed to be a writer, and I would put the second run shows together like All American and Mania, And because I think they had already phased out maybe they hadn't phased out Superstars yet. Now they're bringing it back, but they maybe they still had Superstars. So maybe I was formatting that too. But anyway, I was formatting All American and Mania, and also associate producing Raw. But I didn't actually write the shows yet. But if I would have been writing, if I would have ran the Zoo, I certainly wouldn't have put a guy who's a hell of a talent like Wild Bill Irwin in a hockey outfit with hockey
goon
boots. Yeah, ridiculous. The guy was a hell of a talent. I mean, awesome talent. You know, but they took a lot of guys who were really talented territory guys and just abused them. You know.
What are some examples of that you can remember?
I just gave you one.
Besides that, I know you had mentioned Steve Kern as Skinner before.
Kern as Skinner, yeah. Who else? Rip Oliver. They did a number on him. Rip Oliver basically ruled the Pacific Northwest for like 10 years. You know, him, Buddy Rose. Actually, I got to think about my history because I wasn't there. You know what I mean? During the glory years. Let's see. I was there for like I helped. You know, I was instrumental, I think, in part of it being like the last big run of Portland wrestling before it went, in the tank. But at least that's what Sandy Barr said, who was the other promoter besides Don Owens. And I didn't have to pay him too much to say that. But so let me think. So it was Buddy Rose and Rip the Crippler Oliver, and that was pretty much. I mean, it was a hot territory. I mean, the trips were short. You know, the average trip was what, 50 to 70 miles one way. I mean, it's great. You worked 6 nights a week, sometimes 7. The longest trip was 200 miles, and we bitched the fit about it. And that was only like once every 6 to 8 weeks.
Want to see me run to that mountain and back? You want to see me do it again?
Paramount Plus is the streaming home.
The arena, basically the territory. I think I talked about this, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, so Rip the Crippler Oliver. This is what happens when you do it later. You know, a couple weeks later, you forget what you said, or a couple hours later, for God's sakes. But Rip Oliver was like the kingpin there. And when the WWE came through in '84 and took all the top talent out of each territory, they took it out and and basically they wanted to bankrupt the territories of the top stars. And they brought Rip Oliver in, made him the Super Ninja. Why? For one night on some pay-per-view, I think against the Ultimate Warrior or some Saturday Night Main Event, and that was it. And then basically, once Rip had given up the job as Booker in Portland, then my buddy the Grappler, he wasn't my buddy then, but he became my buddy the Grappler, took over. He actually gave it to his buddy the Grappler and recommended him. And the Grappler came in, and the Grappler had a great long run there. But unfortunately for Rip, Rip unfortunately, got ousted himself, because he thought he was going to get a job in New York, you know what I mean? And it's kind of bullshit. I mean, it's total bullshit. I mean, even bigger case of that is Baron von Raschke was, a legend, as this, and they brought him in, took away his German accent, made him look like the Emperor in Star Wars, sort of. I mean, with the hood, he looked like, maybe that was how I perceived he looked like. But even so, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, the fact is they didn't use him worth of crap. And basically, they just took him to help crush the AWA, which, I don't know. That's it's very predatory, especially considering how much Vince cried about that Turner was being predatory to him. It's like, and then Vern was predatory to other territories, and he complained about them New York being predatory to him. I mean, it's like, hey, look, I'm not a fan of predatory tactics. But, you live by the sword, you die by the sword, I mean, I think it's bullshit, the whole raping and pillaging the other territories, knowing full well you're not going to use them just so you can, put them out of business, you know what I mean, with promises of this and that never occur. And it's bullshit, but it's even more bullshit when then you do it to somebody and then you cry when somebody, like a little bitch, when somebody does it back to you, Who's some other people that they abused? Terry Taylor was a big star, you know what I mean? UWF, it was, and they made him into the Red Rooster. And first run was with the Brooklyn Brawler that he did the job for, I think. So, that's not going anywhere.
Did you have any reluctance going up there? Were you weary of how maybe some of the other guys from like NWA were used or portrayed? Did you ever, or did you know going in, this is how it's going to be?
This is Black Bart, WCCW. He trained JBL, but let's see what he has to say too. That's crazy what Raven said about how Vince treat people in the territories, AWA, how he screw people over. That is wild. That's wild right there. I ain't gonna lie. Let's continue on. We almost done with this interview here.
Well, see, I went up there thinking I was going to be pushed. The only, man, the only reason that Vince McMahon, and I worked up there another 13 months, and I was made top pay. I was making top pay, but I never went higher than maybe 5th or 6th on the card. Okay, because 5th or 6th was the lull of the card. In other words, the fans would be getting bored by this time. Okay, and they got another 4 or 5 matches to go, maybe 6 or 7 more matches to go. And so Black Jack Lanza went and told McMahon that he wanted me on all his cards, put Bart on there, but put me on 6th or 7th match. And that way I could activate a crowd. And he did not want me getting over, and I was. He would not let me cut an interview because he knew if he let me, I cut one interview for the WrestleMania of that year, whatever year that, I think it was in 90. The WrestleMania, I cut one interview. And it was an interview for if anybody on the card didn't want to do the job, I was to step in and do the job, and I would be on whatever part of WrestleMania that was supposed to be. I cut an interview. It's the only one I ever cut up there. And the announcer dude was with us out in the Carolinas. He said, "Bart, you're one of the best interviewers in the business." I said, "Brother, he won't not let me cut no interviews." He said, "Why?" I said, "I don't know, but I'm gonna find out." And eventually I did. I was brought up there to be showed that how much money I could have made if I'd have come up there when he wanted me, when Bass lost that hair match. Okay? Wanted my wife, Sergio Puckett against Beefcakes and Blackjack Mulligan, and put the world strap on us and all the way. But no, Bart stayed his butt in the Carolinas. That didn't last very much longer after that. What, 10, maybe 12 years, 15 years, something like that. I don't know. But it was unbelievable. I done nothing but jobs for 13 months, like I said, except for that one match. Everything else, and unless every now, I'll take that back here, because every now and then I'd be in a tag situation. They would give me the guys would go and say, "Listen, Bart, get boom, 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 and you scoop, and then we'll beat you. We'll beat this guy." Yeah. And that was the highlight of my span up there. It was like when I got my notice. It was a relief off me. It was a relief off me, and not only did I cry, my wife cried, not because that she was sorry that I wouldn't be bringing that money home. She was crying the same reason, because of the pressure was gone. It was a relief.
That is crazy, but we're going to go back to what Animal had to say. We're going to see what Animal had to say. This is crazy what Animal had to say. He got both. Vince got them from the AWA. Figure 4 TV, salute to you. Check out channel Figure 4 TV. Talk about Golden Age Wrestling in the 80s. Type in Figure 4 TV New Jack. So check that channel out. But let's see what Animal had to say. Animal, they man, this is how Demolition got created.
The guaranteed contracts. Nobody had guaranteed contracts at the time, so we were going to be the first ones, besides Flair, that had a guaranteed contract with the NWA. So we go to Vince's mansion out there in, I think it's in Stamford, Connecticut.
Yeah.
And we go to the office. We were at the house first. Sat there, and it was kind of funny in a way because Vince got up to leave the meeting at one time, but he left all Piper's and Hogan's merchandising numbers. They're sitting right on there in the printout. Like, we're not going to look, right? He goes, yeah, you got merchandise stuff here. Here's numbers right here. Of course we look.
Baiting the hook.
So we saw that, and we went to Vince and listen, Vince, here's our guarantee contract. Can you match that? You want to do guarantee? And he says, well, at the time, we don't do guarantee contracts. We give you opportunity. I said, well, I can't pay bills on opportunity.
Right.
So if you have a guaranteed contract, we would do it. Otherwise, we're probably just going to stay with the AWA. And that's what we did. But going in Vince's house, I mean, it was actually kind of an interesting thing. I mean, above his fireplace mantle is this like big, like 5 foot by 8 foot painting of Vince in one of those total green suits and everything like that. And of course, Hawk and I were jabbing with him a little bit about the painting on the wall. And, you know, we actually had a great meeting with him. You know, he had an Oriental chef that made us some real like authentic, like chicken fried rice and all that kind of stuff. It was actually really good. We had a nice meeting, and then we went to the office, looked around the office, but then we decided to stay with the NWA. He played it off like he didn't care, but I think he really did care. We were the only one that didn't jump. He knew what we were making and what we needed to make, what we deserved to make by the time we came in there as a team. And he pulled the old, oh, well, you're a team, so I can't pay you what like a single guy would be paying. I got to split it up because there's two of you. And I was thinking to myself, that's crap, because we're selling a lot of merchandise.
Right.
You're selling hundreds of millions of dollars of merchandise of us. Come on, you know. So he says, okay. I said, well, as long as you make what we were making when we were singles, and in the first year, we made $100,000 less than what he shook hands on. We said, hey man, you said we were going to make it. I'll make it up to you the second year. It was $100,000 less again. So now we're short about $200,000 each working for Vince.
Right.
So that's where Hawk started getting really pissy and saying, you know, screw Vince. If I want to go party and I want to go drink, I'm going to go party and drink. I'm a grown ass man. He goes, Vince is screwing us on pay. I'm going to go do this.
Were people in the office trying to turn the screws on Hawk and keep him on the straight and narrow?
Well, I was trying to, because he's my partner, man.
Right.
I was trying to keep him on a straight and narrow, you know, but yeah, they tested him a lot, and they came and told him he pissed dirty a couple of times, which we both knew he wasn't dirty.
Right.
And Hawk said, test me again. I'll tell you right now, I'm not dirty. I can promise you I'm not dirty. And, you know, but then again, Hawk was fucking the system, you know. And I try to tell Hawk, listen, man, you work for 3M or Honeywell or any of those companies, you got rules and regulations you got to abide by. But Hawk just didn't want to do it. He goes, man, this guy's screwing us on pay animal. I'm sick of this crap. And then finally, when the straw broke the camel's back was in SummerSlam 92, and, you know, at Wembley Stadium, Hawk flipped out.
I came up with a...
Right. You know what? You know how Vince did it with me? He waited until he had booked Minnesota, and then he had me jump one for that card.
Right.
I left the AWA and went to the WWF in that card.
Did you give Vern notice through a mail, and then you did promo?
Telegram. And that was under Vince's orders. I was going to go do it face to face, and Vince said, I don't want you to do that, because he said all that'll be is a confrontation and a fight. He said, just send them a telegraph stating that you no longer desire the bookings of the AWA, that you are now with the WWF. He was my boss, so I did what my boss told me to do. Oh, I loved Vince Jr. Vince Jr. was a savior in a way to all of us in the business. He had a vision, and the fact his production, and we ended up on NBC television, and we all became megastars. I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm at today without what happened at that point, but I played a role in it too.
Without a doubt.
But we had threats, we had death threats. All of us were told we'd never work in another territory, we'd be blackballed again. But that didn't bother me, because I was ready to end it anyway when I was done with him, which I did. We were completely on until I brought my lawsuit against Vince when I left him.
About the royalties and all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And when I sued Vince, of course, we had to depose him. Well, let me regress a little. Right before WrestleMania 2 and right before I did Predator,
right,
I stood up in the dressing room and tried to unionize wrestling.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. And there were nobody from the office there when I did it. I said, boys, now's our chance. All the publicity's gone out on WrestleMania 2. All we have to do is refuse to wrestle and go public and say we want federal, because it's federal law. We want union representation to come in. And what caused that, I was in Vegas, and I got on an elevator with Gene Upshaw. Remember, head of the NFL union?
Right.
I remember Big Gene looked at me, and all he said to me was, "You boys need to unionize." And I said, "I know, Gene." And so I made this spiel to the boys. I said, "Look, if we can do it, then we can get WCW to follow suit. If WCW's wrestlers will do what we're doing here, we can have a union." I made the big spiel. The next day, my phone rang. It was Vince. He came within an eyelash of firing me.
I was going to ask you, how much heat did you get for that?
The only thing that saved me, and the reason I did it, I had to quit Vince to do Predator. Vince wasn't going to let me do it.
That's one of my questions.
And I quit. I told him, well, then I quit. Because I said, I can always come back to wrestling. I'll never get a chance to co-star with Arnold Schwarzenegger again. As I went off 10 weeks to do Predator, Saturday Night Main Event got renewed for a second season, but NBC thought there'd be Jesse Ventura. There wasn't Jesse Ventura. It was Bobby Heenan.
Right.
The heat came down from NBC. We bought this program with Jesse Ventura. Where the hell is he? Then Vince came back, and now the ball was in my court. And so when I came back from Predator, the first thing I did on the set of Predator, Schwarzenegger came up to me and said, "Jesse, my next film this fall is going to be The Running Man." He said, "There's a part in there you're perfect for. I would like you to do it." I said, "Great." So when I got back to the United States after Predator, before I even talked to Vince, I signed The Running Man that fall so I would have the ace in the hole. This way I could say to Vince, no.
Right.
Because I now had an acting career. And plus, when I did Predator, when I came back to Vince then, I said, "Vince, you won't hear me bring up union anymore." He goes, "Really? Why not?" I said, "Because I'm now a member of SAG. I got my union. I've got retirement. I've got medical benefits." I said, "If these guys are too stupid to want it," I said, "then let them deal with it. I got my union."
Now, when you came back, did you sense a little bit of a strain on your relationship with Vince to work with?
No.
Maybe, no?
Nope.
Okay.
Vince is always a professional. When
All business?
All business when you're on the mic and performing.
Okay.
Or doing what.
Now, the reason I went back to the Animal interview is because that was important of how these guys were supposed to get guaranteed money, and they didn't get guaranteed money. And like I said, you got to remember, you got to know what you're dealing with when you sign these contracts. You got to know what you're dealing with, guys. But anyway, not just that, Jesse Ventura, he talked about how, and I explained this earlier, he was a big part of the Saturday Night Main Event. And if he was not there, they was not going to get renewed, and he had the leverage. That's what Jesse was just talking about. Now, did he smell like a true politician, like I said earlier? Yeah, definitely, because he wanted benefits. He wanted a union, and he got that with the acting when he acted in 2 Arnold Schwarzenegger films, Predator and The Running Man, both in '87. So this was definitely something he did. Yep, they were going to cancel the program if they didn't get Jesse. Yep, definitely. They was going to definitely do that. And Figure 4 TV said kind of like how Fox requested CM Punk for their show back when Punk was fired. Yeah, it's nothing's changed. Everything's about that when you sign on this dotted line in the contract. It's everything about it. And then I didn't know the whole I didn't know Hawk spazzed out at SummerSlam 92. How many of you guys knew that? I didn't even know that. And Figure 4 TV said I remember them, which he's talking about the Road Warriors versus IRS and the $1 Million Man and their tag team. Never knew he flipped out. So yeah, this is a very good interview. This is a title match wrestling. Figure 4 TV, I know you say you requested an interview. I can get this out to you. But yeah, this is very important. And the point I'm making with all these guys talking, from the names of Jesse the Body Ventura, you had Raven, Buff Bagwell, Enzo Amore, Animal from the Road Warriors, and a few other ones. And the last guy you saw that trained JBL, Billy Bart, whatever his name is talking about negotiation and contracts. And the fact of the matter is, this is the truth when you sign a WWE contract. These are the terms that come with it. So at like Stevie Richards said at the very beginning, you gotta know what you're signing up for, because the contracts are not all what they seem to be. You maybe think you're getting an advantage, but you're not. Now, Animal mentioned earlier that he was gonna get more money for him and him and Hawk leaving. I think he said NWA or AWA to come to WWF at the time, and he said they was getting $100,000 less as single stars, and then $100,000 less the following year. You gotta know what you sign up for. So the thing about it is they are good. Now he won a guaranteed contract, but they didn't have it back then. But like Steve Richards said earlier, there are a lot of downsides to a guaranteed contract. And the fact of the matter is, do you really want to be a WWE superstar? Now we have Stevie Richards, we have Chris Jericho touch on it, and of course all these legendary wrestlers from the mostly 80s, maybe 70s talk about this stuff. So this is what's going to happen when you sign a WWE contract, guys. Figure 4 TV said facts. That show had a lot going on. Nails beat up Vince, Bulldog on crack, Warrior walks out, and now this. Wow, all that SummerSlam in England. And the crazy part about all that is SummerSlam 92 became one of the best SummerSlams ever. And you had all that drama going on backstage. So literally, you had a lot of people backstage going open mic on Vince.
Who the hell told you tonight was open mic night, bitch?
So that is interesting to say the least. But this is what happens when you sign these contracts. And now I understand why there are many independent wrestlers who never once go to the WWE or AEW. Now I understand Dolph Ziggler, who's in WWE for 19 years, who was recently released some months back. He's now at TNA, but he's doing things independently. And he said on an interview that he does not want to be tied down to a contract anymore. That's the crazy part about that situation. I mean, it's wild. It's wild because he dealt with a contract for years. It's wild because a lot of these superstars went through this over the years. They went through a lot of it. Man, he said WWE was like a marriage, and he said that in an interview back. But like I said, I know there was a lot going on. There was a lot going on back then, and we never know if these superstars are going. You never know these superstars are going behind the scenes. You never know. You never know what they're gonna do and what they're gonna what's the next move gonna be. Contracts are very important, especially nowadays. Very, very important. You just never know at that point. But other than that, though, this is just wild, though. Wild to say the least. And the contracts are important. If you don't sign a right contract, you will get screwed. That's all I gotta say. So, but other than that, that's all I have regarding what are you signing to on a WWE contract. It's the truth behind when you sign a WWE contract. This is crazy though. But Stevie Richards, he gave us a lot of game on these contracts. He told us a lot about the contract games, guys. You guys in live chat and also even he just came in, live chat playback. Let me know what you think about the whole contract situation. Is it really worth it? Trying to become a WWE superstar, because these are the trials and errors, the trials tribulations of being a WWE superstar. Soon two videos will pop up. One will be Real Reason, Kim marry Randy. Second video is legendary match Goldberg versus Hogan. It's crazy. You guys already know what it is. It is OUNT.